Hi, welcome to our second lesson, deploying flexiWAN. Joining me today is our CEO, Amir Zmora. So in this lesson, we will go through the following topics. And the lesson topic, of course, is the name is deploying flexiWAN. So lesson agenda. We plan to cover flexiWAN deployment. We plan to cover how to get the best way how to deploy flexiWAN using our hardware partner options with full zero touch, so that's pure plug and play. We will cover also system requirements, installation options, and afterwards we'll just show on a small deployment example on how to basically deploy flexiWAN and configure it initially, and the interfaces and everything, add token, and then connect it to Flexi Manage. Again, this is the manual approach, just because we want you to learn flexiWAN. Then we will finalize through Flexi Manage and then connect to other sites. So next step is to showcase our flexiWAN Academy. Amir.
Yeah. So thank you, Ivor. So this is a new page that we just put on our website. On this page, you will be able to find the previous sessions, previous lessons that we had. Plus, if you can scroll down a bit, the new ones that are just coming up. So you can see the one that we're having right now and additional ones. Highly recommend to register for these, even if you're not going to attend, but you would want to receive the registration, the recording link. And it's good that you can see what we're planning. You can see a few sessions here already, and we will be adding more lessons to the list later on. With this, let's start with what Ivor mentioned as the first topic. And if you can switch over to the hardware partners page. So as Ivor mentioned, there are several options for deploying flexiWAN. What I want to talk about is, I would say, the simplest one. The simplest one is to use a pre-installed hardware that you can buy from any of our hardware partners. Just a minute, stay there on the top, thanks. And basically, there are three options for certifying hardware for flexiWAN. The first one is certified by flexiWAN. This means that we have actually tested the devices that are listed here. You can see names of various vendors, Silicom, Aeon, Advantech, Landitech, AxiomTech, Lanner, and there are devices for each one of these. We're actually doing some updates. We're certifying more devices now, adding some newer ones, replacing the older ones. This is a live list that we continue to change. The second option is self-certified. In this case, we send to the hardware vendor a document, a guide that details the tests that they should do. Afterwards, we receive the results, we check them, we usually come back to them with some questions, and there is some ping pong until we decide that we are satisfied with the tests that they have done. But of course, these are tests that they have done and not tests that we have done. The third option is what we call bring your own hardware. In this case, you can go and buy hardware from any vendor you want, as long as it complies with our system requirements, and Ivor will show you the system requirements in our documentation. You can, of course, consult with us if needed, and then you can test the device yourself and start using it. So these are the three options. When you go for a certified device, the hardware vendors can provide you a device with flexiWAN pre-installed. And this is the easiest way. Not only that, for large deployments, you can even request having a token, which is something that Ivor will talk about when he talks about the installation, that identifies the specific network and organization, and by that even make the installation simpler. Another thing to mention is that there are customers of flexiWAN that use their APIs. Basically, we have, of course, the UI of the cloud management system of flexiWAN, Flexi Managed, and we also have the web UI of FlexiEdge, the software instance, regardless if it's installed on the hardware device. on which one it is installed. So these have APIs. With these APIs, it's possible to integrate with your OSS, BSS. And we have customers that have built full automation. So a device is sent to a customer site, it's plugged in, it pulls right away the customer ID from their OSS, knows from that what's the token, puts it inside through the APIs. The user doesn't have to do anything except for just knowing how to plug in a cable. Okay, that's the easiest option for the user. And what Ivor is going to touch here is going to go more into the manual options, because when you have a small deployment of just a few devices, sometimes you need to go for this type of option. So that's it on my side. Over back to you, Ivor. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Okay, good. So now that we covered these options of the hardware options, let's dive in and talk about the deployment. So as said, let's switch here to documentation pages, which I highly recommend for everybody to always keep an eye on, go through it. And first, so let's cover the system requirements for flexiWAN. And in fact, we're going to use the terminology FlexiEdge a lot in the first part because FlexiEdge, as explained in our previous lesson, is actually the device that is running the flexiWAN router. And this device, we've called this device FlexiEdge. And so basically, to move on, let's go to system requirements. The system requirements are pretty straightforward and not that difficult. We require 2 CPU cores at minimum. So for you can view it better. So yeah, 2 CPU cores, 64-bit CPU is required, 4 gigs of RAM. But if you would like to be future-proof, we definitely recommend more because we constantly, continually develop more features. And so just to be future-proof, 16 gigabytes disk minimum size, and of course, at least 2 network interfaces. So this is actually the main caveat with FlexiWAN is that the network adapters must be DPDK supported by DPDK and PCIe based. And you can actually view the complete list on the DPDK. This is just a direct link, and you can view all the list of the supported DPDK adapters. In general, it's the usual networking appliance and server hardware that is listed here, and of course with the addition of cloud providers. So these are the requirements. So the next step is basically, let's just go through So the next step is basically to plan or to view all the options for FlexiWAN on how you can get FlexiWAN and install it. So as Amir explained, the best and the fastest approach is to use bare metal from our hardware partners. And this can then take advantage of APIs and full zero-touch deployment on a large-scale deployments. However, we also offer pre-built virtual appliances for hypervisors, such as VMware, KVM, QEMU, and VirtualBox. And this can be installed either on desktop or server hypervisors. We also offer an installation image, which can be used on appliances or either from our hardware vendors or your own white box. And finally, the manually from packages you can install. If you have Ubuntu 18.04, you can install FlexiWAN, but the fastest way is really just to download our image or appliance or purchase a pre-built appliance. Another option also that I would like to mention is FlexiWAN can be deployed on public clouds. And we offer guides for Amazon, Oracle, Hudson, and DigitalOcean. These guides are fast and quick. You can, for Amazon EC2, we just provide a small Ansible script which deploys FlexiWAN on Amazon. Pretty similar for other providers. This option is very good as well as for production. It's also good for quick test or quick demonstration to a potential customer, because you can spin up FlexiWAN in just a few moments and have fully working system. So from this page, you can download the ISO and or the appliance that you wish to deploy. And that basically covers the flexiWAN deployment options. So to summarize, flexiWAN can be delivered to you from our hardware vendors, with which you can utilize I'm sorry, just I need to move this page here. With whom, so you can utilize. Apologize. So to summarize, we can purchase the bare metal appliances directly from hardware partners to utilize API and zero touch with the use of API. You can also download ISOs or virtual appliances or deploy public clouds. So the next step the next step is to actually dive in and basically demonstrate on how to get flexiWAN running in your testing in your environment. For the purpose of this lesson, we are doing a small scale deployment. So here on the Flexi Manage, my account here, you can see that I already have 3 sites, and there's a full mesh between them. And we want to now create an additional site. Let's call it a Berlin site, and it will then be able to connect, and we'll cover now basically how to deploy it fully and connect it and do initial configuration and complete the configuration from Flexi Manage. So basically for the purpose of this lesson, I've decided to use a pre-built virtual appliance of flexiWAN, and here it is. So I'm already SSH to it. So it's deployed on ESXi, and we offer 2 options, 2 initial configuration options. One is through local web UI, which is called FlexiEdge UI, which is not to be confused with Flexi Manage user interface, which is the central cloud management system, which others call controller in SD-WAN terms. But so let's start basically using the quicker option, the easier option, which is the FlexiEdge UI. So also just one step, as explained in system requirements, this device has 2 network adapters. One will be WAN and the other will be LAN. And by default on WAN, device is reachable and you can access it via the SSH or via FlexiEdge UI. You log in. This is the UI which follows the similar design as Flexi Manage. And it follows also, if you check our documentation, it follows all the deployment steps. So the plan is to go and run system checker, go through configure interfaces, and then finally add the token and connect this device to UI. So let's go through each. So the first thing to mention is, and again, this is very important. We are now showing you the deployment that is a manual deployment. This is not necessary if we're doing zero touch. And if you purchase a hardware appliance from our partners where you get the hardware working out of the box. The purpose of System Checker is when you have a clean installation of FlexiWAN or virtual machine on your system, that you run System Checker to make sure that this system satisfies the minimum requirements and it has everything ready. So and the System Checker can be ran from 2 sites. It can be ran from UI or from the SSH. And I'll try to cover both. So basically, the easiest thing is just run it. You make sure that there are no critical hard passes. And as we can see here, everything is pretty much passed, and you can do auto fix. And that's it. Basically, the optional checks have failed, but you're good to go. So we can repeat the same thing from the console. I'm not going to mention it too much, but if you're deploying FlexiWAN, somewhere we don't have direct web UI access or just don't want to do it, you just log into SSH to the device, do sudo su, log in, and then you just run System Checker command, which is FWS System Checker. And here you can configure the system the same way or use the interactive option, but we're not going to focus too much on that. Now let's just try to demonstrate just how the quickest way is to connect this device to Flexi Manage. So now that we confirmed that the system is satisfying the system requirements, let's switch to interfaces. And this device, in this case, actually has 3 WANs. The Ethernet 0 is the WAN network, the Ethernet 1 is LAN network, and the Ethernet 3 is the management network. This is something that I will talk a bit about later. As this is, and this image by default, our images by default have a WAN enabled DHCP on WAN, and the LAN is static IP, but you can change all of this once you add it to the Flexi Manage. Of course, you can change if you need. You can change set the static IP if you're deploying on a different environment, but we'll complete this configuration from Flexi Manage. So the interfaces are configured pretty much as we want to. So the next step is to add the token. So what is the token? So the token is a piece of code which connects your device to your Flexi Manage account. And the way you can do it is we go to inventory, tokens. Let's create a new token. You can see that I already have a couple of tokens, so I will explain the purpose of this. So we're going to create a token. And so here you can see that I have multiple tokens. Each device can have its own token, or we can have multiple devices use the same token. The token, as explained previously, connects the device to your specific Flexi Manage account. So you can use, if you for added security, you can have a separate token for each device, especially in remote areas, if the device is deployed in a remote area. What you can also do with this type of token is, this is the part that we use for automation and zero-touch provisioning. You can copy this token and deploy on mass scale using either our hardware partners or using Cloud Init, which all of these images support, all of our images support. So you can automate deployment, insert the token during the boot up, and it will automatically show up in Flexi Manage. So for this, so now let's copy this token that we created, and let's go back here, device settings. You just paste it, and you click update token. That's it. So the first and initial part of the configuration is of the information is done. And let's just so check now in the devices page. You can see that we have a pending unapproved device. So to summarize just what we did. So we decided on a device. In our case, we used VMware appliance, but you can use, of course, the ISOs. And we checked all the options that you have for flexiWAN. All of these options have detailed guides, so please check them out. But you can deploy flexiWAN, bare metal, virtual appliance, or in public cloud. Then we went through the initial boot up and explained what are the steps necessary to connect this device to Flexi Manage. And of course, just to move one step back, we ran system checker and configured the interfaces. So the next part is that we had to switch to Flexi Manage. We are now done with the device configuration, local device configuration. The device has internet connectivity, so Flexi Manage already saw it. And you can see that it's unknown devices waiting for approval. So this is the secondary step of the token. Token installation is two-part process, and this is for security reasons. If you still have to, if you install the token, you still have to administrator has to manually approve it. This is an added step for security purposes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, in this section, we are going to approve and then approve the device and then configure interfaces, and I'll explain all the networking options that you can do. So let's do the first step, which is approve, and let's call this device Berlin, and you click approve. After that, click update, and in a few moments, the device will briefly disconnect and reload all the configuration, confirm, and in a few moments, the device will show back in UI as connected. Here we go, and we are now approved, connected, and synced. The synced part is something that I will explain a little in a moment. So now that we have the approved device, has to be configured in order to be able to actually run it and use it in your existing environment. So we switch again to the device. You just click on the device name, and the interfaces configuration can start. So let's go through each of these columns first, and just to expand, and actually through the configuration of this device to learn about how to approach this. So as you can see, multiple interfaces are visible, but they're not approved, or they're not assigned. I'm sorry. So they're not assigned. So if you want to use an specific interface with flexiWAN, you have to assign it. So in this case, we want to use WAN and LAN network, and flexiWAN automatically recognizes what is what. But you can also, if it's not correct, you can change it here or set to none even under type. And you can see also the Linux names of all the interfaces in this area. So moving forward, you will notice that I assigned 2 interfaces, but I didn't assign the third interface. So the third interface is the management interface, which I referred to at the beginning. So the management, we recommend management interface for more important environments, or if you have an extra network port, simply because flexiWAN utilizes dual networking stack. Basically, while we install on Ubuntu Linux, and while our images are based on Ubuntu Linux, if flexiWAN, once you start flexiWAN, once you start the vRouter, we take the interfaces and we run we run it with flexiWAN with the help of VPP. And this is why it's important to have DPDK supported interfaces. However, the interfaces that are not assigned will still remain using the Linux kernel networking, which is a very good fail-safe for, reaching the device in case there's misconfiguration or any kind of issue that you cannot reach the device from the primary. You can use the management interface. So this is something that I wanted to explain a bit more, in more details, just so it's easier. And of course, you can see here that we have, wired interfaces, because this is a lab environment and a small deployment, and we didn't really add LAN. We didn't add a wireless or LTE. However, we do support LTE for secondary WAN, and we have in our documentation list of supported LTE devices. But what's also important is that all our hardware partners that are certified by flexiWAN can deliver devices with supported modules, and everything working out to the box. So yes, in addition to LTE, we also support Wi-Fi for local area network. And yeah, so that's it. So let's continue to configure and go through each of these columns. So as self-explanatory, pretty much there's a MAC address column. There's an option to configure the interface as DHCP or static. And there's also an option here, if you click on this knob, is to use DNSs that are via DHCP or configure your own. IP. So this section here, the IP configuration is also pretty much self-explanatory. But if you have static configuration, you can change. Like for example, in here, we'll set this to 14. And you can see that we have a gateway that is automatically detected, and it shows that online that there is internet access available. So you can click on the setup gateway to actually view or change the internet monitoring. So this is enabled by default. But if you are deploying flexiWAN in an offline scenario, or like through MPLS, where you don't have direct internet access, definitely disable this option. So because we use internet monitoring also for failover, which I will touch in a few moments. So internet monitoring is part of our failover feature, which works out of the box automatically if you have multiple WANs. And it doesn't matter even if the WANs are assigned or not. If the primary is assigned and this management is not assigned, at least the communication to Flexi Manage will always, if the primary fails, will report to Flexi Manage that the primary has failed, even though no traffic will go through an assigned interface. At least the Flexi Manage configuration and communication will be able to be exchanged through this way. So, and the way you configure actually the failover, especially if you have multiple WANs, is that you can use the metric to decide which will be the primary or the secondary interface, a WAN interface. So in this case, the lower the metric, the higher the priority. And here we also have, public IP detection. This is and also type of the net. At the moment, it detects full cone, which is correct because this is device behind net, behind the existing routing network, router infrastructure. And with this, we come actually to an important point is that, flexiWAN can be deployed with either public IP directly on, its WAN, or can be deployed behind NAT. And we also support single side symmetric NAT, which is often common with LTE deployments or CGNAT. What's also important is that by default, stun is enabled, which is used for IP detection and also for NAT traversal. So NAT traversal enables to establish tunnels behind NAT. So if you have flexiWAN sites behind NAT, you can still establish tunnel, even if one side has a single side symmetric NAT and the other side full cone NAT, it will be able to establish tunnels or all possible combinations, public IP to some kind of NAT and so on. So moving forward, the path labels, this is the section that we touched in the first lesson. So path labels are a logical way to logically label each interface. Think of it as a post-it sticker which you put on, or a label that you add on an interface to name it. And we're not going to touch on this in this demo, but in a future lesson. But the purpose of path labels is basically it's twofold. It's being used for tunnels. It can be used for advanced tunnel configuration and also for our application-based routing feature called path selection. So finally, in the last column, we have a routing. By default, there is OSPF enabled on LAN. This is by design. So once you connect multiple sites, they will exchange routing tables and be able to reach. Each client will be able to talk and communicate. Of course, the OSPF can also be tweaked if options can be tweaked if you have some OSPF system behind on the LAN side. So with that, let's update this device and confirm that configuration is save this configuration. And in a few moments, you can see now that everything is synced, that the WAN IP is ready, and we can actually start this device. But I wanted to just touch a few more options. So now that we have the interfaces fully configured and that we explained all the possible options that are available, or we can also, we have a DHCP tab, which you can use to enable a DHCP server on LAN side. This is definitely recommended if you want to have a faster client deployment. Of course, you can do manual assignments as well. And that's while we touched on these about these tabs initially in the first lesson, I just want to point out that the routing table is something that we will show in this webinar, because right now, remember that we have no tunnels, so it only sees the upstream routing table and current its own and upstream routing table. The policies, there are no policies installed, but one thing that I would like to touch on is this device is now, if you're deploying this device and if you're using SSH or if you're using the web UI to configure it, after you start vRouter, you will not have direct access from WAN, because by default, we deny all inbound and allow all outbound traffic. So what you want to do is, in order to be able to reach this device, you just want to add, allow but not outbound, but inbound. You just want to approve inbound rule for example, 22, which is the SSH, just so you have access, otherwise you will not be able to do it. So let's move on, go back to the main page. And so to summarize, we've now approved the device, configured the interfaces, and this machine is now ready to basically to start and to be joined with the other devices. So I'm going to click Start Device. And in a few moments, the device will connect. And right now, if you go to dashboards and network, we have an existing network between these three sites, and we are now trying to add Berlin. And in a few moments, the vRouter will start, and this device will be able to be used. Also, as you may have noticed, and we touched on this in the previous lesson, is every change you make, it's going to create a job, and you can verify all the jobs, which is the start device. It has now completed, and now we put 2 devices. This device is now running, and it's ready to connect to other devices. So we started the device, and if you go to network dashboards, we still have this Berlin site here. It's not connected to any of these sites. So let's do it. So let's go, and also just to point out, I will connect. Let's go to Tel Aviv site, and you can see that Tel Aviv has dual WAN, so it has 2 WANs, and we are going to connect this device to both of them. And to do that, you go back to the devices page, select Tel Aviv and Berlin, and then directions, click create tunnels. We are now just going to do direct connection, but you can also choose between hub and spoke and full mesh if you have more than 2 devices selected, or path labels. I just want to announce the next webinar is planned to cover flexiWAN tunnels and path labels. So we will cover this in a much more details in our upcoming webinar. So that's it. We now click create tunnels, and 4 jobs are added because it has this job for each interface. And if you go here now to the network table, you can see here that Tel Aviv has 2 tunnels already added, and now just waiting for the job to execute. And once it completes, you will be able to reach, the clients will be able to reach. So if I go back now to tunnels, and if I verify Tel Aviv, and 1 tunnel is already connected, the second one will as well in a few moments. It usually takes a few moments to have all connected status because shown as a connected status because we use we gather some network statistics to make sure that the links are working okay or not. So if you go back to network dashboard, you will see now that there's a full line between both of these devices, Tel Aviv and Berlin, and that the tunnels are actually in fact established. And so now here's the part that I wanted to point out that I covered. So if you go back to Berlin, and remember the routing table, it only had its own routing table and on upstream. Now, if I click routing, the table is much larger. And this is because we now, thanks to Tel Aviv, to which we connected, we have routing tables from Tel Aviv, so from Berlin to Tel Aviv, but also we inherited thanks to the OSPF, we got all the other routes propagated from the other sites. So with just few clicks, we are now able to establish tunnel, and then Berlin can talk to Tel Aviv to Berlin. However, also New York, Tokyo, and Berlin can talk to together through Tel Aviv. So to summarize, we have added a new device, configured it, ran it, and made sure that it runs, configured it correctly, and then we have connected it to the Tel Aviv site. So this basically covers the section for this lesson. What I would like to say is that we planned also for Q&A, but let's also cover just a few moments. So the whole webinar. So the lesson agenda was that there is we covered all the deployment options, such as hardware options, such as on how to get the fastest way to deploy flexiWAN with full zero touch using our automated API. We covered system requirements. We covered all the formats that flexiWAN is available on. Then we did the actual deployment, initial configuration, connected it to Flexi Manage, and completed the configuration. And finally, we have connected it to other sites. So now we have a QA session, or if Amir would like to add something.
No, it's okay. Let's see if we have any questions and conclude.
Yeah, let's wait for a few moments for the questions to come in. That's pretty much it. I hope this was interesting.
Maybe meanwhile, if you can say a few words about what you're planning on the next lesson.
Yes. So in this lesson, we touched on tunnels. and we showed how easy it is to connect tunnels. But for next lesson, we will go in depth about flexiWAN tunnels, and we will show how to, get full mesh, hub and spoke, or tunnels deployments. But we are also going to cover path labels for the use of path labels with tunnels, because with path labels we offer a much granular way to establish tunnels between sites. Yeah. So.
Okay, great. So I think that's pretty much it. And the next lesson is going to be on the 1st of March. So you're welcome to register. And thank you very much, Ivor.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.